The United States is, of course, still the largest economy in the world, but its reputation has been battered by the financial crisis. So what does China, the runner-up in the race for first place, think of America's economy? Has it lost faith in America's competence? I asked China's Premier Wen Jiabao. Do you feel that the global economy is at this point stable and strong, or do you worry a lot that there is a danger of the so-called double dip, that the United States in particular could go back into a recession?
客观地讲，世界经济
Well, objectively speaking, I think the world economy is recovering, although the process of recovery is a slow and tortuous one. People may not have the same view on this matter, but I believe we will learn a lesson from the reality.
我希望美国
I hope that there will be a quick recovery of the U.S. economy, because after all, the U.S. economy is the largest in the world. I have taken note of the recent policies and measures taken by President Obama, including the program of doubling the United States exports and the massive investment in infrastructural development.
出口倍增计划
I think these policies and measures are the ones on the right track, moving in the right direction. Although they came a little bit late, they still came in time. This reminds me of the time when I took the big decision of advancing a massive stimulus package in China. Back then, people had different views concerning this policy, but now the progress has shown that our stimulus package is a successful one.
May I ask you what lesson you have drawn from the financial crisis? Have you lost faith in American macroeconomic management? A Chinese friend said to me, he said, we were like the students in class and we would always listen to what the Americans would tell us. And now we look up and we think maybe the teacher actually didn't know what he was talking about.
这场百年不遇的金融危机
In the face of the financial crisis, any person who has a sense of responsibility towards the country and towards the entire human race should learn lessons from the financial crisis. As far as I'm concerned, the biggest lesson that I have drawn from the financial crisis is that in managing the affairs of a country, it's important to pay close attention to addressing the structural problems in the economy.
在中国经济取得
China has achieved enormous progress in its development, winning the claim around the world. Yet I was one of the first ones to argue that our economic development still lacks balance, coordination, and sustainability. This financial crisis has reinforced my view on this point. On the one hand, we must tackle the financial crisis. On the other, we must continue to address our own problems. And we must do these two tasks well at the same time, and this is a very difficult one.
我们首先认识到
China has a vast domestic market, and there is great potential in China's domestic demand. China is at a stage of accelerated urbanization and industrialization. We can rely on stimulating domestic demand to stabilize and further grow the Chinese economy. This requires us that we must seize the opportunities, speed up our development, and stabilize the Chinese economy. And on that basis, we must take a long-term perspective to address all these structural challenges in our economy. As far as the U.S. economy is concerned, I always believe that the U.S. economy is solidly based, not only in a material sense, but more importantly, the United States has the strength of scientific and technological talent and managerial expertise. It has accumulated a wealth of experience in its economic development over the past more than 200 years. In spite of the twists and turns, the United States, I believe, will tide over the crisis and difficulties, and we must have confidence in the prospects of the U.S. economy. The recovery and further growth of the largest economy in the world, that is the US economy, is in the interest of the recovery and stability of the world economy.
Your stimulus package was 10 times larger as a percentage of your GDP than the US one. It was an extraordinary program. Is there a worry that it has produced a bubble in China, in real estate? Are there dangers of inflation because the government spent so much money? And what happens now that that stimulus is going to wear off? There will be less and less government spending.
您对一揽子计划的理解还不全。
From what you said, I think you have not seen our stimulus package in its full or in its entirety. I would like to say that our stimulus package has 4 key components. The first is massive public spending, structural tax cuts, and infrastructural development. The second is the adjustment and upgrading of industrial structure in China. The third is scientific and technological innovation and the development of emerging industries with strategic significance. The fourth is the improvement of social safety net. The 4 trillion RMB yuan investment does not all come from the government. Public finance only accounts for 1.18 trillion RMB yuan, and the rest will come from the non-public sector and fundraising from financial markets. The implementation of the stimulus package has ensured the continuance of steady and relatively fast economic growth in China. It has helped maintain the good momentum of China's economic development in the past 30 years, and it has helped us avoid major fluctuations in the process of China's modernization because of a severe external shock. At the same time, it has laid a solid foundation for future development of the Chinese economy.
你提出的问题，
We are on high alert against the challenge that you referred to in your question. Let me make 3 points.
就是
First, there is a possibility of inflation in China. That is why we have formulated the task of skillfully manage the relations between maintaining steady and relatively fast economic development,
与管好
structural adjustment,
三者之
and
间的关系。
managing inflation expectations. This is at the core of China's macroeconomic control. I do have worry
也就是说，
for
处于可
the
控的范围。
management of inflation expectations in China, and that is something that I have been trying very hard to manage appropriately and well,
并且
because I
而
believe
努力的
corruption and inflation will have an adverse impact on stability of power in a country. And these two both concern the trust and support of people in the government. And this is the perspective that I see the issue of inflation in China.
第二，
Second, with implementation of the stimulus package, there are fiscal and financial risks at the level of local governments.
金融
We have some financing vehicles of local governments. They have some debts, but this is not a new problem that took place after the outbreak of the financial crisis. Rather, this already came into being back in the 1980s.
到现在为止，
Now, with the financing platforms of local governments in place,
融资
they have accumulated a total debt
所
about
欠的债务
7.6 trillion RMB yuan.
6万亿。
And I can say that this debt at the local level is still within a range that we can manage. But it is important that we appropriately handle this matter to ensure that the debts at local governments level will not bring about risks in our public finance and in the financial
我们
sector.
现在
The ratio of
财政赤字
budget deficit in China's total GDP is within 3%.
总
The
额
total debts in
还在
China
3%以内。
versus GDP's ratio is within 20% range.
也
That
就
is
是
to
说
say,
整
it's
个
still
的债务
in a range that we can manage.
两者
The third point is a more important one, that is, all our investment now must be conducive to our economic structural adjustment,
这样的高
not
度
the contrary.
来
This concerns our long-term development prospects and therefore is of high importance.
Next up, with China's Premier Wen Jiabao, a great sticking point between the United States and China, censorship. Can a nation reach its full potential when its people don't have free access to information, especially on the internet? Premier Wen's thoughts when we come back.